For 4 years, Wall Street thought he was a genius. The penthouse, the profile pieces, the parties where everyone laughed at his jokes, because when the man who could move markets laughed, you laughed with him. They were wrong. He wasn't a genius. He was a thief with a very good algorithm. And the algorithm was about to eat him alive. Welcome to Corporate Chaos Scandals, the place for the most shocking and unbelievable workplace confession stories. From office drama to hidden secrets, nothing is off limits. Before we get into this, make sure you subscribe and like, because we bring you stories like this every week. His name is Montgomery Davis. He is 36 years old when this story reaches its conclusion. He grew up in a suburb of Columbus, Ohio, the kind of suburb that is neither poor nor rich, that has good schools and adequate everything, and that is therefore, to a child with a specific kind of inner life, the most boring place on earth. Montgomery was that child. He was the one who sat in the back of every room, every classroom, every cafeteria, every space where social hierarchies were performed with the casual cruelty that adolescents apply to these things, and watched. He was not popular. He was not unpopular in the active sense of being targeted. He was overlooked, consistently, thoroughly, apparently permanently overlooked. His name was not remembered by teachers who had been saying it on the register for a full semester. He was not invited. He was not included. He was not noticed. He was also, underneath the invisibility, absorbing everything. The back of the high school library was where he spent the hours that other students spent at sports practice, or in the corridors, or at each other's houses. He was not reading novels. He was reading market data, economic journals that the library subscribed to that nobody else in the school had ever checked out, annual reports that he requested through the interlibrary loan system, which the librarian processed with a confusion she didn't bother to conceal. He was reading about the mechanics of financial markets at an age when most of his peers were figuring out how to talk to each other. He had a thesis that he was refining across 4 years of high school. The thesis was this: financial markets were not rational systems. They were human systems, and human systems were driven by human psychology, by fear, by greed, by the specific cognitive shortcuts that groups of people use when making decisions under uncertainty. If you could understand the psychology precisely enough, you could predict the market's behavior, not by analyzing fundamentals, but by modeling the emotional responses of the humans inside it. And if you could predict the behavior, you could position ahead of it. He took this thesis to college, where he studied finance and computer science in a combination that was, in the mid-2000s, not yet the obviously synergistic pairing it would become. He was not, at college, the overlooked person he had been in high school. He was in the specific environment of a quantitative finance program, someone whose thinking was recognized as unusual. He had 2 professors who understood what he was working on. He had his first significant trading gains in his junior year, using his own capital on a brokerage account funded by the money he had saved from 3 years of part-time work. $12,000 became $41,000 in 8 months. He told nobody. He went to Wall Street at 22 with a mathematics master's degree and a model he had spent 6 years building. He joined a mid-tier proprietary trading firm. He kept his head down. He kept the model to himself. He refined it. He traded within the firm's parameters and generated returns that were noticed and attributed to exceptional market instinct. Nobody suspected that the instinct was algorithmic. Nobody was looking for it to be algorithmic in the way he had built it. And then, at 26, Montgomery Davis left the mid-tier firm and registered his own trading entity. He called it the Davis Market Group. He had 4 clients. 2 were former colleagues who had seen his returns and wanted access. 2 were investors he had cultivated over 2 years with the patience of someone who understood that the right clients, secured carefully, were worth more than many clients secured quickly. He had, by this point, completed the construction of what he privately called the Echo Protocol. The Echo Protocol was not, in its final form, a single piece of software. It was a layered system, a network of interconnected algorithmic components that worked together to achieve 3 distinct functions. The first function was position intelligence. The system monitored the order flow data visible to the firm's trading infrastructure for patterns that indicated the imminent execution of large institutional trades, mutual funds, pension funds, large asset managers. When they moved significant positions, the movement left traces in the market data in the seconds before the trade fully executed. The Echo Protocol was designed to identify those traces, interpret their implications, and position ahead of the institutional trade in the fraction of a second available before it completed. This practice, called front-running in its most direct form, was illegal. Montgomery had constructed a version of it that was insulated from the most direct forms of regulatory detection by a layer of algorithmic complexity that created plausible deniability at any individual transaction level. The second function was sentiment amplification. The system identified high-volume trading periods in specific securities and introduced automated buying or selling patterns designed to trigger momentum responses in other algorithmic trading systems. These momentum responses created price movements that the Echo Protocol was already positioned to profit from. It was, in the language of market manipulation, a pump and dump architecture operating at microsecond speed rather than the slow, manual pace of traditional market manipulation. The third function was information architecture. This was the most audacious element, and the one that, in retrospect, best illustrated Montgomery's particular genius and his particular arrogance simultaneously. He had built a network of automated content generation tools, not sophisticated AI by the standards of what would become available later, but effective for their purpose in their time, that produced and distributed false market intelligence through financial news aggregators and social media monitoring tools used by algorithmic trading systems. A false report about a regulatory decision planted in the right format at the right moment would cause automated systems to respond before human verification could occur. Montgomery would be positioned for the response before the plant was detected and corrected. This was not a simple system. It was complex, layered, redundant, and maintained with a discipline that Montgomery applied to every technical element of his life. He updated it constantly. He tested it. He monitored it. He was, in the technical operation of the Echo Protocol, a rigorous and attentive engineer. He was also making, by his 4th year of operation, approximately $40 million a year in fraudulent profit. The money did something to Montgomery Davis that the money was always going to do to Montgomery Davis, because money operating on a person shaped by what had shaped him was never going to produce a quiet, private outcome. He bought the penthouse. He bought the car. He had the tailor and the restaurant reservation and the table at the event that everyone wanted a table at. He did not do these things for comfort. He had not been uncomfortable before. He did them because they were visible, because visibility was what had been denied to him for 17 years in a Columbus suburb, and what the money, his money, the money he had made by being smarter than everyone else in the room, now allowed him to claim. He also hosted a gala. This was not an investment decision. It was a performance, a private event at a venue in Manhattan by invitation only, with a guest list that Montgomery had constructed over 6 months with the deliberateness of a general positioning troops. former classmates, former colleagues who had underestimated him, certain journalists, certain social figures, the people he had compiled in the back of the library and the back of every room, whose names and faces he still carried with the fidelity of a person for whom being ignored had been a formative and not a temporary experience. He stood at the center of that gala, in a suit that cost $4,000, and smiled at people who had not smiled at him in high school, and watched their faces as the magnitude of his success registered. He gave a short speech, gracious on the surface, precisely pointed underneath, that contained, in its structure, the specific quality of a man settling a score that he had been keeping for 20 years. He did not embarrass anyone directly. He did not name names. He did not need to. The event itself was the message. Look at me. Now you see me. Now you all see me. He drove home afterward and felt, for the first time in the whole achievement of the thing, that the feeling he had expected was not quite what was there. There was satisfaction, significant satisfaction, and underneath it, a flatness. The people had come. They had toasted him. They had said the right things. He had watched them do it, and he had known, with the particular clarity of a person who had spent his life studying human behavior, that what they were expressing was not admiration. It was calculation. They were here because being here was advantageous. Because he was the man who could move markets, and knowing him was useful. He had not made friends. He had made satellites. He did not examine this feeling for long. He had a trade to execute in the morning. The case against Montgomery Davis began, in the official account, with a whistleblower, a junior developer in the Davis Market Group's technical infrastructure team, a 24-year-old named Priya Sharma, who had been hired 8 months prior and who had been given access, in the course of a technical maintenance assignment, to a segment of the Echo Protocol's code base that she had not been intended to see. She was not a financial expert. She was a software engineer. What she saw was code. And the code was, to someone with her specific training and her specific understanding of what the various elements were doing, clearly designed to do things that algorithmic trading systems were not legally allowed to do. She did not know all of the specific regulatory frameworks. She knew enough. She knew what front-running was. She knew what spoofing was. She knew what she was reading. She took 3 days to decide what to do. She spoke to nobody at the firm. She consulted an attorney independently, explaining the situation in general terms without names. The attorney told her what her obligations and her protections were. On the 4th day, she called Luna Legal Group. The file she delivered, a selection of code segments, and their accompanying documentation, extracted from the system she had been maintaining, was reviewed by Zatanna Luna's technical consultants within 48 hours. Their assessment was a single word: catastrophic, for the Davis Market Group. Zatanna filed the racketeering lawsuit 11 days later. The suit was accompanied by an emergency motion to freeze the Davis Market Group's assets. The motion was granted within hours of filing by a federal judge who had reviewed the technical evidence and had reached her own single-word assessment. Montgomery Davis was in his office when the freeze executed. He discovered it when his trading system reported that all positions had been suspended, pending a regulatory hold. He called his attorney. His attorney told him what had happened. Montgomery sat in his penthouse office for a long time. Below him, visible through the floor-to-ceiling windows, were the offices of the companies he had been trading against, manipulating, front-running, profiting from for 4 years. The same view he had acquired specifically because it gave him a sense of dominion over what he was doing. The view looked different now. The SEC and the Department of Justice had been building toward this independently of Zatanna's civil action, but the civil filing accelerated a timeline that had been moving slowly toward the same destination. The criminal referral came within 3 weeks. The indictment followed. 11 counts: wire fraud, securities fraud, market manipulation, racketeering. The indictment was 73 pages. It contained a technical appendix prepared by the SEC's own quantitative analysts that reconstructed the Echo Protocol's operation across 4 years of trading history, documenting 347 instances of identifiable front-running, 212 instances of automated sentiment manipulation, and 19 instances of false information distribution that had caused measurable and documented market disruption. The people who had attended the gala, the ones who had toasted him and said the right things and been in the room because being in the room was advantageous, were gone before the indictment was publicly filed. Not gradually, immediately. The kind of disappearance that happens when people have been present for the performance of success and have no appetite for the performance of consequence. Montgomery's attorney negotiated the terms of his surrender. He turned himself in on a Wednesday morning at a federal courthouse in Lower Manhattan. His face was on every financial news screen in the country by noon. The man who had spent 20 years wanting the world to notice him had finally gotten his wish. He pleaded guilty on 7 of the 11 counts. His cooperation, which included full technical disclosure of the Echo Protocol's architecture to the SEC, which used it to identify gaps in their own surveillance systems and remediate several of the mechanisms the protocol had exploited, was factored into the sentencing recommendation. He received 8 years. He was ordered to pay restitution of $238 million, the calculated proceeds of the fraudulent trading activity across the 4-year period. The penthouse was sold, the cars were sold, the accounts were seized, the Davis Market Group was dissolved. Priya Sharma, the whistleblower, received a portion of the SEC Whistleblower Award Program proceeds that applied to the regulatory enforcement action. She has used it to fund a graduate program in ethical AI development. She has never given a press interview. Montgomery is serving his sentence at a federal facility in Pennsylvania. He is, by the accounts of people who have spoken to him, sharper than ever and notably quieter. The particular energy of a man performing his own importance for the world has, without an audience to perform to, given way to something different. He reads, he has, in the absence of a trading terminal and an algorithmic system, been learning chess. He is reportedly very good at it. He has said, in a letter to his former technical team that was included in a legal proceeding, the thing I built was brilliant, and I built it entirely to make people notice me. I spent 4 years not understanding that the only person who needed to notice me was me. He is 36 years old. He will be 44 when he is released. Plenty of time. Whether that time produces the person he described in that letter is not something anyone can answer yet. That is the story of Montgomery Davis, the invisible boy from Columbus, the algorithm that could move markets, and the gala where he finally made everyone look right before everything fell apart. Drop a comment below. Does Montgomery get any sympathy from you? The origin story, the library, the being overlooked, the high school invisibility. Does that change anything? Or is it irrelevant once we get to the fraud? Because I think this is the question at the center of this story, and I want the real debate in the comments. And if you are not subscribed to Corporate Chaos Scandals, hit that subscribe button right now. Like this video. Share it. We are here every week with the stories nobody else is telling the way they deserve to be told. I'll see you in the next one.